Today's episode of the InsideEVs Podcast is brought to you by eRange EV Tyre. eRange EV tyres are specifically engineered for electric vehicles. Using an advanced manufacturing process called liquid phase mixing, eRange EV's EcoPoint 3 technology creates a tyre with lower rolling resistance and longer range, while offering low levels of wear and high grip. All this while staying affordable. Go to erangetyres.com. That's ERANGE tyres.com to find your EV's next set of tyres.
It's Friday the 15th of December. Christmas has vomited on my jumper and we are four wonderful people wanting to tell you all about EVs. Welcome to the Inside EVs Podcast. As ever, I am your host, Alex Goy, joined by the boss man himself, Patrick George, Miss Go Electric, and Hazel Southwell. Three people who know lots of things about lots of things, really, which is quite fantastic. How are we all? Have we had a good week?
Indeed.
Yeah, had a great week. It's not been busy or chaotic at all. But I have a special treat for everyone today, which they are doing extensive construction on my apartment building. So my corner of the podcast comes from the cabin of the Mercedes EQE AMG and its Wi-Fi hotspot. And if you're watching this on YouTube, it's hyperscreen. Look at that, folks.
Hyperscreen. In no way is it large, overpriced, or distracting.
The hyperscreen alone costs more than most cars I've owned in my life.
Is it like a $10,000 option?
Like 13.
That's yeah. Yeah, no. I've played with one of those before. It's a nice gimmick, but it's actually 3 screens in one. Why not just have 3? Anyway, Hazel, how are we? Bright, bouncy, shiny?
Yes. Yeah. I've decided I'm going to be a nice person this week.
You feeling better?
Yes. Yeah. Well, yeah.
Savage. Right. So, without further ado, let us begin with some news.
EV News.
Even though
Nice
normally
magic
at this time of year, all the news sort of stops as everyone breaks for the holidays and goes home and drinks and plays charades or whatever normal people do. There's actually quite a bit of news going on this week. It's been very
Alex,
busy.
that did slightly make you sound like you're a robot that's impersonating a human.
They're on to me. Run!
And you said they play
Boy
what?
bot.
They play...
Charades. Sorry.
Oh, charades. Okay, sorry.
Charades.
Yeah, that went over the heads of the Americans here. I apologize.
I apologise. I shall be removing the U from aluminium in future as well. Don't worry. But anyway, there's been loads and loads of quite good news, really, or interesting news at least. Let's kick off with the Cadillac Vistiq. It's a naming convention I love because there aren't enough Qs in modern day vernacular. It's a new 3-row SUV that sits between the Lyriq and the Escalade IQ because can't have enough Qs. Yes. And there's Jim Roth, the VP of Global Cadillac, said our brand now has an EV entry in most segments, and not many of them are on the road, but okay, mate. Now, the details are a little scant at the moment, but it was spotted with a 600 E4 badge on the back, same as what you get on a Lyriq, which hints to 102 kilowatt hour battery, 500 horsepower, 450 pound-foot, 600 is Newton meter ease torque. But it also could mean that's kind of a cooking one, and there'll be a quicker one, which will get the Escalade IQ's 680 horsepower and 615 pound-foot. That's kind of all we've got on it. What do we think? I mean, I think it looks like it's another car that looks like Bert frowning at Ernie.
I
love Bert and Ernie.
I do too, but when Bert frowns,
I
he's
see that now. It's amazing.
Yeah, sorry, I've ruined Cadillac's design language for the world, and I regret nothing. Anyway, what do we think, team?
I just want to throw back to having an EV on the road in most segments.
Yes.
like I would argue that there may be a few bits short of a Terry's chocolate orange there. In the sense that, like, if you consider
the Brits chose violence today, man.
I was gonna say, didn't she say she's gonna be nice today?
Yeah.
I know.
Yes,
I know
yeah,
how quickly the mask slips.
Oh no!
No, carry on. Twirl that mustache. Twirl the mustache. Be evil.
I'm interested what the segments are in terms of, like, so you got a big SUV, a big SUV.
Yeah,
a slightly less big, but still very big SUV.
And then several other big SUVs. Yes, and that's how we make electric cars.
like if those are all the segments, they're like fair. But I would have thought, like, you know, even looking at large vehicles, maybe a pickup truck. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, how many Cadillac EVs are on the road at the moment? How many could, if I was to fly over to America and walk into a Cadillac dealership and go, I want an electric one, that I hear there is an EV entry in most segments. Which segments can I buy?
So basically, and I think we're going to talk about this the podcast too. Today is like unofficially, it's like Ultium Day on the InsideEVs podcast, and which includes this car. But they announced a big product push. You know, I think mid last year, and then 2023 was supposed to be their year. All these different EVs come out from the GM brands. The Cadillac Lyriq was a big one that was their luxury crossover, and like those are basically impossible to find. I mean, you see a few on the coast. Apparently, you see a good amount in Michigan for obvious reasons, but like they just have not many have been on dealer lots. It's just been sort of weirdly MIA, and like they did the first press launches of that like a year and a half ago or in 21 or something, but it's just like, where are these cars? And that's a great American mystery that we have. So to answer your question, if you came over here and wanted to see a bunch of like Cadillac EVs driving around, I don't think you would right now. Sorry to say.
But Lacey, you live in Cadillac land. How many have you seen?
I see them a lot, actually. And obviously, I live close to where headquarters are, and a lot of executives live out in the area that I'm like kind of up north past Detroit. So there's a lot that I see that drive around. But unfortunately, so I feel like I'm so frustrated with GM, as you guys who have listened to this podcast over and over again, we continue to say this. It's like, it's such a tragic story because, they are saying that they're coming out with all these products and these different lineups and different EVs with Ultium, and they just can't seem to get it done. Like, they just can't get these cars out. And I love the idea of what they're trying to do. I really do. But, like, come on.
You should
How many cars are you going to introduce, and then we're just still not getting cars?
It's just been very telling to me this year that I see one pulling up in my rear view mirror right now. Like the biggest hit the GM's had, the best selling car in their EV line has been the Bolt. The Bolt's old, but it's affordable and it's tough and it gets the job done. And
it's available.
Really, it's available.
Yeah.
But they sell Bolts like crazy, and everything else is just kind of fan fiction at this point.
They're having their best year. And, I've been talking to some colleagues that I'm working with on this project that I'm on in Tennessee, and they're interested in buying a Bolt that's used because this upcoming year, it's cash on the hood, $4,000 used tax credit that they can get. So there's Bolts out there that are listed maybe like anywhere between 10 and 15 grand plus the $4,000 off. So, and a lot of them are still being sold right now that are the recall Bolts. So they're listed at pretty good prices because they just went through the recall process, but you can get them for a really good deal now. And I think those are going to get scooped up heavily at the beginning of the year.
4,000 off a used EV is really good.
That's
an incentive.
There's some requirements, but so keep that in mind if you're interested in looking into it. But yeah, it's compelling.
To bring it back to this, would you prefer this to a used Bolt?
No, but we don't get Cadillacs here, so it's. I will always go for the small EV over the massive one for. Oh, some crime outside! Excellent. I would always go over the small EV rather than the massive one if you live in a city. If you don't, then fine. But then again, it's the thing we talk about often is that British cities and European cities are, small, and you can have a little car like that and you can like bounce around and fire everything everywhere. Whereas, driving around Dallas, it's mostly highway. LA
Yeah.
is mostly highway, so it's a mega city one situation over there. So I do get it.
As for the Vistiq, I mean, just on its own merits, like we don't know anything about the price, the specs yet. The badge alludes to a power figure in Newton meters, which I haven't had enough coffee to do the math on when it comes into torque. Why they're doing it Newton meters, I don't know. I think it looks good. I actually really like the design of this SUV. I think it looks like a baby Escalade. The Escalade is like that's Cadillac's best-selling car these days, I believe, or at least one of them. And it's like, or it's at the top. But like this is it's a very handsome design. Like I think it's more distinctive than the Lyric is. I think it kind of leans into that sort of Cadillac-ness. Like I like the way it looks. It's that's not the problem here. The problem is this thing going to exist? Are they going to get it out? Is it going to have issues? Like that's kind of what matters at this point,
Love Bert and Ernie.
Love Bert and Ernie. Oh, Patrick, to answer your question, a Newton meter is equal to 0.737561 of a pound foot, or a pound foot is 1.356 Newton meters. There you are. If you're in the mood for some quick math,
just know it off the top of your head.
I'm a colossal nerd, man, but I'm not that bad.
Oh.
I googled it.
Kilowatts is multiplied by 1.34. I know that one.
Math whiz
horsepower
today.
Yeah. No. I can do kilometers. 100 kph is 62 miles an hour, but that's easy. But not 1.31 whatever. So yeah, we have thoughts. The thing that I think will do well will go in this car's favor. Someone mentioned in the comments. Let me scroll up. Bennett Elder said, that's not the one. The big complaint in the US is that everybody thinks they can't switch until they find a 3-row that isn't a Model X. And so with the EV9, as admittedly, the UK launch of that was on last week. Sadly, I couldn't go, but they were saying it's like £70,000, which sounds like a lot because it is a lot. But then I guess the Cadillac would be positioned that one step higher. So, but it means you can now have lots of children and not worry, or a very active lifestyle, a windsurf, skis, a snowboard, a boat, and not have to worry.
Would qualify for tax credits where the EV9 wouldn't.
Yes, correct. As long as it's under 80 grand, it would in theory.
Yeah,
so loophole.
True. So we kind of like the Vistiq if it ever appears, I guess. Maybe, might not. In other news, our boss man, Mr. Patrick George, has been driving a Blazer. Now, in the UK, that sounds like you've been running around in a very fancy coat, but apparently it's a car. So do tell us, fill us in. What's up with the Blazer? Tell us all the things. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it a car?
Yeah, I guess it's speaking of Ultium stuff, because this has the same underpinnings and batteries as the Vistiq we just talked about, which is how all of the GM EVs are going to work. Same platform, same software systems, tailored to different sizes and prices. This is the Blazer EV. It's a big deal. I drove it in California last week, and I went there because I knew it was such an important car, and because I didn't want to be on the East Coast in January. I'm sorry, in December. What month it is anymore. It's so cold in this car, but no, this is a super important car for them because this is the mid-size quote unquote performance SUV, which I'll get to in a second, and they're positioning it against the Mustang Mach-E, the Tesla Model Y, and the Hyundai Ioniq 5, which all those cars have their strengths and weaknesses, but like they're three of the very best EVs that on the road right now. I think like this thing it picked a fight with like the three biggest guys in the yard is kind of how I describe the Blazer EV. And it was honestly, it was kind of a mixed bag. And I was surprised at all of the reviews I read. It was one of the most tepid responses to a new car that I've seen in a long time. I mean, like an extreme version of that is how people reacted to the VinFast VF8, but not a lot of critics loved the Blazer EV. Like it's big, it's spacious. I thought it was very comfortable. It's got a lot of great physical controls, like actual buttons. It's like this. It's pretty user friendly. unlike this hyperscreen thing I'm in right now, where I have to Google everything to learn how it works.
But the manual is so easily placed on the hyperscreen. You can find it on one of the screens somewhere.
Once I find the manual, we're going to be in business on this thing, I tell you. But Blazer, it was very user friendly. I think it's definitely meant to be like, look, we're Chevrolet. We know that probably most of our customers, they never had an EV before. They're not early adopters. Like, we're going to make it easy for them to transition. I think it succeeds in that mission. But two things stand out. Is like the performance isn't that great. It's kind of slow and like not that fun to drive. I think the power delivery is a little bit more like a gas car, the way it delivers torque. It's not that instant acceleration, and it's expensive. We drove the Blazer RS, and it was like 59, 60, 63K depending on configuration because of the rear or all-wheel drive. And I'm like, 60 grand, even with the tax credits, that's a lot to ask for this car. And I know the Lyriq has been kind of MIA, but it's very, very similar. And you could buy more of them right now. And they're basically priced kind of the same. Like, you could get a Lyriq for the same price as this. And I think a better interior and more luxury features. And it's just, they're asking a lot for this thing. And last thing I'll say before, I want the host reaction too, is like, these were supposed to be like mid 40s, and they canceled the like entry level trim. They have a front wheel drive one coming out next year. They haven't said how expensive it is. They say it's going to be under 50 grand. They expect most Blazer EVs they sell will be that car, the front wheel drive under 50 grand one. So I think even GM kind of admits that, like, I don't know, it's like the pricing is odd. And like, there's also a Blazer SS coming out with I think 557 horsepower. It's the fast one. But if this is 60 grand, I have to assume that'll be 70, 80, something like that. And so I don't know. I'm a little unconvinced by this thing, even when there are things I liked about it.
So I have questions. So when you're in your RS, there are two batteries that you can get, either 85 or 102 kilowatt hours. Which one did you have? Was it 102 kilowatt hours?
I tested both, actually.
Right.
So it was, it's the different battery sizes, whether it's all-wheel drive or rear-wheel drive. Which is an interesting setup. It's also odd that the rear wheel drive, the one motor in the back, that's the more powerful and faster of the car, because the all-wheel drive version, it actually has less horsepower and slightly more torque. But the quicker one is the rear wheel drive one, which is like unlike every other EV out there. Like, we all sort of know at this point, you put a dual motor equals speed minus range. Like, that's just how this is. And this car does it in reverse. And also notable, it's like you can get a Blazer EV in all-wheel drive, performance all-wheel drive for the SS, front-wheel drive, or rear-wheel drive. And I believe that's the only car ever that can be had in all three drivetrain configurations.
Well, unless you have a very broken Range Rover, then yeah.
What wasn't there one, like, I feel like this is, no, maybe it was this car. Okay, I'm going to shut up. I was like, I feel like I had literally a discussion with Patrick about this about like a year ago, and then I was like, yeah, no, it was probably.
But one of the things that was kind of bugging me out is the range is what, 279 to 324 miles, and I know we had the discussion on max min range last week and how that is misleading. But if you've got a 102 kilowatt hour battery and 324 miles of range, that's not brilliant. Like, a Merc EQS is a big, heavy car and has a comparable battery and a comparable range on a good day. If if the weather gods are on your side and the battery's up to temperature and all that. Like, what is their justification for that? Did they have one where they're like, this is what we got out of it? Sorry, good luck.
I didn't. That's a great point to bring up, is that discrepancy is not something I thought about. I mean, like, I think it was like most buyers are just going to look at range, period. Yeah. I think it's pretty good. Like, it's, for the all-wheel drive one, we're talking 279 and then 324 for the rear wheel drive one. I think that's respectable. Like anything over north of 300, I think you're really not going to worry as much as you might think. But I think not enough customers are going to look at like that sort of like efficiency, battery size to range ratio yet, because you're right, it is a little odd. Like, that's like there are 100 kilowatt batteries that do far more than just 324 or whatever. That's a bit odd.
It's a colossal battery, but I did note the weight. It is very heavy. It's nearly 5,600 pounds, which is
Yeah.
that's a lunch or two, isn't it?
It's about 1,000 pounds more than any of those cars it competes against. Model Y, Mach-E, Ioniq 5, and like those are not lightweight cars. Like
Yeah,
there are no
like,
lightweight vehicles, but
that is really heavy. What have they
Yeah.
put in it?
I
A lot
just-
of
apparently a massive
batteries.
battery battery
This-
that it
yeah.
can't drag very far.
This is the problem that I'm so, and again, if you guys hear me talk on this podcast, I talk all the time about efficiency. It really makes me upset because you are going to have this vehicle be as expensive as it is because they're jamming pack all these batteries and they're making a huge battery to try to hit their targets for this range, but they're not focusing on efficiency. So that is ultimately people are like, well, who cares if they throw more batteries in it? No, it ultimately comes down, it's going to cost you more money. And if they can just prioritize the engineering, they can get the cost down and make a more affordable EV. So it's good for everyone. It's good for the business. It's good to get that supply chain up because then they're using less materials in order to produce these vehicles and they can get more volume on the road. So it's just very frustrating to see price points of these types of vehicles. And, considering, like you said, Patrick, competing, you're like kind of eating you're cannibalizing yourself with the Lyriq being so close in price point with what you can get out of this car.
Yeah, for sure. And I think on the efficiency thing is like you're right. How people just don't realize how important this is. And let's game this out and think about why are we doing this? Why are we doing a transition to electric vehicles? Right? It is ostensibly for climate reasons, to quit with emissions, and that's across the board. And it's like if this car's not efficient, it uses more energy. It requires more energy when you plug it in, and it's like it's ultimately not a net good. So we're so focused on range that we don't care about what the end goal should be, which is using less energy, period. And it's like I don't think that's maybe the car companies don't care. It's more about just competition and survival and profits at this point, which doesn't surprise me, but it is out of step with like what this ought to be focused on a little bit.
Well, so I would like to take the kind of devil's advocate type of stance here because this is one thing that I'm slightly frustrated as well about the whole EV movement is that I think it is great that the idea is to move for green initiatives and to try to be more environmentally friendly. I'm not against that at all. But the legitimate way we will get more people to convert to electric, like a lot of people, unfortunately, Americans, they don't care about that. So how do we do that? We have to make it more compelling of an offering. And it starts usually at the pocketbook. I mean, look at why the Toyota Camry is one of the best-selling vehicles. Why is the Model Y one of the best-selling vehicles now on the planet? Of course, the F-150 is like the best seller, so that usability makes sense. But most people buy a car because they want to have it be reliable. They want it to, cost. They want low maintenance. And EVs offer a lot of that, but the prices are still a little high. So we need to get the prices down in order for more people to consider buying an EV.
Yeah, exactly.
That's my
so.
take. Hot take.
There's also a huge
It's a good take.
There's to like be the tedious person who talks about manufacturing, it's about somewhere in the region of 50 kilowatt hours of energy to make 1 kilowatt hour of storage, somewhere around there. And that means that because if you're looking at something like an Ultium factory, like these huge plants that are being built by car manufacturers, where one of the biggest concerns is supplying that electricity. We've seen, for instance, Tesla in Berlin get into some really big trouble in terms of its power consumption. It's a big thing where these plants are being set up and where OEMs are running into genuine difficulties because of the power consumption. If you can bring down the amount of power it takes to make a battery pack, which the obvious way, if you can knock off 20 kilowatt hours of storage, that's a lot to save there. These are all things where you're making it more viable to actually make these production lines, which, as we discuss every week, they're struggling. Yeah, that's my bit. I've shut up now. But yeah.
Southwell out.
Yes. It's a tough transition, no doubt, but I think that that focus needs to be like, I I didn't adopt an EV because of the green element to it. Like, I think it's a good bonus, but for me, it was, I leave for long periods of time. I want to let my car sit for a long time and not have to worry about then coming back to it and having all this maintenance, taking it to a dealer, having oil changes, fixing this and that, this belt, everything. So, that was my motivation, and the cost of operating is low. So I think more people will be willing to buy an EV if they can see these benefits, tangible benefits that are also going to be like the main motivator driver of costs. Like, everyone cares about how it hits their pocketbook.
And I think that the massive success of the Model Y and Model 3, and again, our friend the Bolt, proves all of that. It's like people went with cars like in mass this year because they were great deals. And it's like I could get a great, reliable, compact, like relatively small but practical car, and I can break up with gasoline. Like, some of those are no-brainers, and like we are just not gonna. It is just not appealing to do that with a Chevrolet that costs $63,000.
Yeah.
I don't get it. And like, again, it's like the two cars this one competes against. Like, Mach-E is a stellar performance car, it's something really neat on the road. The Ioniq 5, I think, is pound for pound one of the best cars in the world, period, in terms of its specs. The Tesla is, it has unbelievable advantages in so many ways, we all know, but like this, I don't know where it stacks up. I'm like, I don't know why I'd tell you to buy it, but
I mean, everything you said about it, having read the review and spoken to you now, everything you said about it, it just sounds like Chevrolet has made an car. It's just like, do you need a car? Yes, here is an car. It will do car things. You won't love it, but you won't hate it. It will just exist as a thing.
Is this maybe, though, like, and actually Patrick mentioning the Ioniq 5 made me think of this, because in London there are loads of Ioniq 5s, absolutely loads of them.
Oh yeah.
Because they all got bought for fleets. And so I wonder if, you would not tell a person to go out and be like, I want a daily, this car, but like maybe this is the car where companies that have been mass buying Teslas go, oh, you know what, we're going to replace all of our fleet with this because it's a car.
Yeah, and that's the GM strategy. It's just like, it's the same stuff you've always wanted. Silverado EV, it's Equinox EV, it's this. It's everything we did but EV. And I don't know. There's a bit of a reckoning there, where this moment is going to catch up to the fact that cars, period, have just gotten crazy expensive in the last few years, period. And people look at this and they look at the let's admit the challenges of owning an EV right now, which are very true and are very real. But with a little extra cost in most cases, and they're like, screw this. And I don't know, we're just not making as compelling a case as we can. But as always, BYD is happy to do that once they get their Mexican factories up and running. It's the boogeyman that looms over the whole industry.
The big old boogeyman.
Big old boogeyman with some very pretty cars. Anyway, Blazer is an car, so maybe buy one if you want one.
I think people still will buy it, though. I mean, not a lot of
it's
volume,
the Victoria sponge of EVs, I guess. It's a thing that will do what you need it to do, but isn't in any way special.
The employees at GM will, so I'll see them a lot.
Employees at GM will have them. Yeah, the company car scheme is going to go great guns. There's been another electric SUV bit of news. There's a lot of electric SUV news this week, but I went to Leipzig a few months ago. That's the bizarre thing about it. To have a look at the new Porsche Macan. Now, on InsideEVs, Tim Stevens has driven a prototype in the US. I went to the Leipzig factory where they're going to build it. It's where the Leipzig factory is where it was built for the Cayenne, I believe, and then Macan and Panamera production shifted there. Lots of it saved the company vibes. And fun fact about Leipzig, when they founded the factory, they asked the locals what they could do to make life a little better because they were going to screw up traffic. And a church inside town said, please, can you fix our organ? So now there is, in Leipzig, an organ with 5 dials that starts on a Porsche key. It's cool. Anyway, fun Leipzig facts aside. Yeah, Macan, it's going to be, I think, if they do it right, it will be kind of the darling of the middle classes, as the Macan is now, but without a V6. So it's got, they haven't given full battery specs. They say around 100 kilowatt hours, 800 volt architecture. Though if you hit a charger that doesn't talk with that, it will then split the battery essentially into two 400 volt ones and then charge it like that, which is very clever. They say power is up to 306 horsepower and 737 pounds and feet. Range TBC, but expect lots. And it's really quite cool. I mean, there's lots of stuff going, like the interior, the infotainment setup. We had a big old workshop on that, and essentially that they were saying, we know how people just use CarPlay. We've made this as convenient as we can. We've got the Porsche app, and then you can tell it send routes to the car, and it will do it instantly. We've made sure it'll turn on immediately, because waiting for your car's brain to wake up isn't cool. But for the moment, if you plug Android Auto into it, it will then put the Google Maps map in the instrument binnacle. And there's something similar coming for Apple CarPlay with it as well. So that's a kind of quality of life thing that people who don't necessarily think about the powertrain side of things, but think about how is this going to be easy to get from A to B, and does it have the right badge? That's kind of a winner. The interior obviously is gorgeous. It's a Porsche interior. It's got lots and lots of screens. There's a screen on the passenger side which passengers can watch, like stream video content. And the reason the reason they're not worried about drivers watching it is because they've used a special film to make sure the driver can't see it. Yeah, all right. And the highlight of it though was being taken around the tracks at Leipzig. There's a Porsche Experience Center that basically takes the best bits of all of the good racetracks. So there's a sort of corkscrew bit. There's a carousel from the Nürburgring. There's bits from all over the world, and we were given each of us that there were three prototype cars and three very excited German test drivers. My chap, bless him, his English wasn't great and my German isn't brilliant, but we managed to communicate via the medium of laughing and skids. And basically every corner the guy was crossed up. From where I was sitting, weight transfer wasn't too much of an issue because they've got jazzy air springs and Porsche trick dampers. Obviously, it is going to be a heavy car. Plenty spacious inside. I didn't want to hurl, which was great. They then took us off-road, and it's got various off-road modes. And for the customer base, all you need to know is that yes, it will get across the field at the school fete. And if anyone does want to climb a mountain with it, they can have a good crack at it.
You go to off-road parks in America, and every car there is a Porsche Macan. It's just people. Yeah. They've replaced the Jeep Wrangler in this country. It's the most popular off-roading vehicle. No, I'm obviously sarcastic. So it's you kind of just sort of like raise an eyebrow at the off-road modes in this car and the track competence. Neither of which will use this thing ever in those capacities, but it can if you want to or fleeing from someone. But
it can do it. It's covered in cameras and sensors, so you won't scratch an alloy or a body panel.
So the one thing fleeing from someone, but you want to take your really posh dog.
Yeah. There's one thing that Porsche is like very, very keen to talk about, and it's their communication lights. So any car nowadays, including Patrick, the one you're sat in, it's got mood lighting. It's this needless chintz thing that lights up the car and is distracting at night, but makes people think like they're in a nightclub in the 80s, which I kind of get why, but also it just
doesn't want that.
Well, me, I don't.
But this is such a weird lockdown hangover. I'm sorry, like this whole like weird interior lighting stuff is from this. There was a bizarre.
That was like a thing for you guys. This is funny. I like it.
But no, it's. I think it's just me and Hazel being British curmudgeons. But I find it just. I
don't really mind it. I actually quite liked it, and like the iX has it, for instance, and I thought it quite suited the car. But I find it's a very weird thing that car companies have put quite a lot of time into, And I don't think anyone really cares that
It's
much.
absolutely needless. I mean, it was on. They debuted BMW debuted a version of it on the R56 Mini, the second generation new one. It's just a switch in the roof that just turned the interior of the car red or green or blue or purple. It's like, why? Anyway,
One thing to know very quickly on the mood lighting thing is we roll our eyes at it. Buyers in China love that thing. Like they love.
really?
I think luxury buyers do love it.
That's why they added it to the Tesla Model 3 Highland. Like that was the big thing that like buyers in China were like, oh, it doesn't do mood lighting. Well, screw this. So like that says a lot about why this is a feature. You know, different markets.
I can't make my car look like a techno club. What is this?
Yeah, like I need a car that will have, you know, the biggest possible cup holder for the biggest coffee that I can consume because I'm an American, and in China they have the 80s nightclub vibe. It's just different strokes for different folks.
Different folks. Well, with the communication light, so with the ambient lighting, the front bar of it tells you stuff.
Like the ID for.
So that and it's kind of smart. So it'll tell you when you're on launch control. So when the chap was going to take me out on the circuit, the thing was pulsing blue, and I didn't realize what was going on. I thought he was just making sure that we weren't going to clatter another prototype. But that was launch control, and then it will glow different colors for your charge status, what drive mode you're in. That's not a new thing, really. Minis do that. But also the thing that is quite cool is the driver assistance tech, because the car knows if there's someone walking in the path of the door, or whether there's a cyclist coming, which is a huge thing over here. You know, cycling is everywhere, and it's great. But drivers don't necessarily pay attention. Like the number of times you can be cycling down a side street and someone parks up and just gets out the car, and you end up having a very short discussion with very short words as you fly by. So that's quite cool. But having spent time with it, in around it, and having had like all the spiel, I really hope it's as good as they want it to be. Judging by the people that have driven it, drives well in prototype form. It's next year we'll see the full thing. I mean, the cars we saw were very lightly camoed. We didn't see the full thing, obviously. If they get this right, Porsche wins, because everyone who's got a Macan right now will go, oh, we'll have that one. Oh, and they've got this magical charge thing. So the car, you don't need a card or an RFID thing. You just plug it in, and the charger will talk to the car and just charge you automatically, which is it's a someone's agreeing as they drive past honking. It's a really smart way of doing it, because again, it just removes that layer of faff. So you can just plug it in and go away, and it will do the thing. Yeah, I like it.
It's an interesting car because it's like, you think Macan EV, you think like compliance car. It's like, it's an existing car with stuff with batteries. And it's like, no, this is actually doing some really interesting stuff. It's a new platform. There's a lot of like new Volkswagen Group tech that's debuting here. There's a lot of new stuff from Porsche. Like, this is very much like, you know, it's as you did in your review, it's like a lot of like Taycan stuff has trickled down and matured and evolved onto this car. Like, Macan EV is a big deal, and like it's also because Volkswagen Group has had some issues here too. Sorry, you're hearing some background, but it's like it's been delayed a bunch, and like a bunch of people at VW Group have been fired and laid off over the delays on this car, software, batteries. So like this is one of those ones that and like I think like the Audi
the Q6,
like they those were
the same.
Yeah, big deal cars, you know.
No, it's a cool thing. I genuinely think if they do nail this, and the transition is easy, then public school car parks, Waitrose, Trader Joe's, Whole Foods, yoga studios stuffed with them. They're just going to be everywhere. Which is,
Alex, I have a question about horsepower.
Yes.
Did you see any of the wild ponies whilst you were at Leipzig?
I did not. There were wild ponies in Leipzig.
Yeah, that plant is full of wild ponies around the test track.
Oh no, didn't see them. But unless they were, because we were going mostly sideways, so I was looking out the side window straight on. So yeah, sadly, no wild ponies for me, or any wildlife, but a lot of meat.
You know what I found interesting, that you said that they had revealed that they were going to do a split pack for charging. Why are they mentioning that?
because they're
Why are they
very
mentioning that? Because they know maybe that there might be some issues on some other networks, maybe that could come across some issues with something like that.
Mm-hmm. Perhaps they were very proud of it. There was the man giving us the demo was like, well, it'll do this and then it'll do this, and it's two battery packs rather than one big one. It's all very special. No, it's
I
very
mean,
cool.
I like the idea of this, and I think the Macan, it's long awaited. I'm excited about it. It looks good specs. It looks like it, good suspension. It has good handling. It has a lot of good tech in it. I think it'll do well. The only downfall here in the States is that they haven't said that they're going NACS.
Yeah, which is they're like the last major holdout at this point, and we all assume it's an Electrify America thing. I mean, like, because Volkswagen owns EA, like it has something to do with that. But it's like, I don't know. There's no way they don't capitulate to that at some point. I don't.
Why are they mentioning the split pack? I'm just saying, maybe that's a little hint. Am I being optimistic?
Tiny hints as to what's to come. Well, yeah. So Macan, good. We like it. It's ace. So other news this week. Let's talk Tesla again. Tesla's having not a great week. The NHTSA has issued a recall of 2 million-ish Teslas, which is pretty much all of them, because autopilot isn't great. Essentially, they're not best pleased with how it alerts a driver to when it isn't on, which can cause accidents. This is kind of it's the thing that stuck out to me in this is partly because obviously they've spotted it and they're doing something about it, but also the culture around this news on the internet has been so unbelievably toxic. Like Musk's mum was tweeting about how people who really know it's not a recall. It's just an update. The first line of the Tesla thing says this is a recall, and you get people jumping on going, but it's not a recall. Oh, people just hate Teslas. Like it happens all the time. Toyota did it. Like Ford had like 1,000 in the last week. It's a thing that happens.
But also, like I get that because people are like, it's not a recall because you don't have to, these cars aren't being taken off the road or whatever, but it is mandatory. That's why it's a recall. It's a forced update. It's not, this is something that they have been compelled to do by an authority because those cars are not considered safe to drive otherwise. That's why it's a recall. And yes, it's something that is a software update. It probably should have always been there. It is a very simple fix, which makes it even more embarrassing that it wasn't there. But it is a recall, and anyone who doesn't get that a product recall based on safety is because it's mandatory and because it is mandated by an authority. Yeah. Not because Tesla were like, we're going to make autopilot even better. Woo! This is the difference.
And they'll do. There are voluntary recalls that the automakers do all the time. This was not one of them. This was a 2-year investigation by the federal NHTSA into autopilot issues. Lacey, I want to punt it to you in a second because you're the Tesla owner here. I'm really curious what your perspective is. But just on the recall front, I think this is interesting for a few things. Like, I don't think it's like the system worked. Tesla dragged their feet on it, but eventually this got fixed. And like, welcome to the future, folks. Like, we call this a recall, but it's a software update. I think some years from now, decades from now, this is going to be a lot of the recalls we see. It's less over physical stuff, engine stuff, and way more of this. So this might be a watershed moment in automotive history and how we consider recalls, because it's basically every Tesla on the road, as minus the Roadster, which doesn't have autopilot. And as far as I know, none of the Cybertrucks are affected. So, okay, that's a pretty big recall, all happening digitally, and that is welcome to what's next moment, as far as I'm concerned. But Lacey, I mean, like you've used autopilot extensively, you've owned these cars. Like, what do you think of it and what they're trying to fix here?
Well, so I always actually didn't like autopilot. And I'm probably very different from a lot of Tesla owners, and I think it's because it's dependent on which vehicle you have, whether or not you have radar or not. That's my take. My Model Y had vision only, and it was right when they basically switched over Model Ys not having radar. And I had phantom braking every time mind you, I use all my driver assistance features as much as I possibly can every time I drive. Like that's how I drive. I'm like, immediately turn it on. I love using those systems. And mine would phantom brake every single time I would turn it on. And it was very frustrating. And imagine if you're on the highway and it slams on the brakes. That's a scary situation. Someone could run into the back of you and stuff. So
I mean, that's horrific and unthinkable.
Yeah.
Like when someone does an emergency stop on the motorway, it means something bad. They are trying to avoid something bad. If the vehicle is the cause of it, whether or not you're a Tesla stan or not.
Well, and I think
If the vehicle I was in did that, I'd be like, right, I'm out, I'm done. No, thank you.
Yeah, and for me, I know my car, I never turned on FSD or FSD beta. No, I didn't have enhanced autopilot. So like there's different levels of autopilot. There's the regular base autopilot that comes with the car, which is your lane keeping and your adaptive cruise control. Then, enhanced autopilot basically when you upgrade to enhanced autopilot or FSD, there's some other element to the system that turns on that allows your vehicle to behave very differently. And I never opted to get any of those services. So there are some people that have the car that was exactly like mine, that's vision only, that they didn't have the same experiences I had, but I truly believe it's because some of those vehicles had the extra capability. Even if you then stopped paying for the subscription, the car was performing in a very different way than just the base autopilot if you never bought enhanced or FSD. So, I mean, if any of you have any, opinions or your experience from autopilot, I'd love to hear it in the comments, but that was just my experience. And that was kind of what I thought, because I had been in other Tesla models, even like Model X, Model S, that had FSD capabilities, and they didn't have those issues. So to me, that's my stance on autopilot. There aren't any perfect systems out there, so let's be clear on that. I'm not picking on Tesla because there's problems with pretty much all of them, in my opinion. But as far as recalls go, yes, it's a recall. But generally, it being an over-the-air update is not a problem for most people because it's such a simple fix and it's done right in your driveway. But the only reason I think this is such a huge controversial topic is because it affects the stock. Like, I truly believe that. Like, that's why all the fanboys are upset and that they're making a big stink out of it because it affects their pocketbook. That's just my take.
Yeah. Because again, it's Elon has said, like they're staking the future of Tesla on full self-driving. It's the difference between Tesla being the most valuable company in the world and worthless. And he's like, I think at some point this year, he even said, full self-driving by the end of the year. It's like, well, folks, we got 16 days left in December. So maybe some
year what? How many times have we said this already?
Yeah. Well, it was just 2 years away, or just 5 years away, just 1 year away, end of this year. I mean,
I appreciate what they're doing. I think they're doing amazing things, and they're incredibly talented as far as like developing the system. It is impressive when you see full self-driving in action and you experience it, because it's like incredible. But there's so much work to be done. It's such a complex problem to solve. And how are we going to solve this with weather and things like that? That still is like a lot of this stuff. I'm not saying all of it, because I know some people, even in the state of Michigan, that do a Dirty Tesla has a lot of FSD videos. But conditions in the wintertime and, that kind of stuff is really what concerns me, because obviously I live in an environment that has an element.
To be sort of outraged of London, the easiest way to make sure that your autopilot equipped vehicle can function is drive it yourself. Like just if the conditions are bad, don't trust the machine, do it yourself. I mean, there will still be, until there is some miraculous network that links all the cars together, like the car to car tech, and when everyone agrees that okay, we should actually have something in common, which they never will because capitalism. The problem they're trying to solve has already been solved, and it's been solved by getting a driving license. But that's just me being angry. Anyway, Hazel, you're making a face.
I mean, I think so. I like Lacey. I'm all in favour of driver aids. There's particularly quite a lot of, like, as someone who has occasional epilepsy, there's a lot of driver aids that I think are super important, and that like make me driving in the future kind of more viable. I think there's also huge amounts of accessibility that can be added to cars via driver aids. And generally I'm not opposed to them. I think I'm opposed to the same thing that the NHTSA is, or NHTSA, or however
how
you
do
meant
you
to say
that? NHTSA?
We pronounce it NHTSA. It's not an acronym I love because it's like nobody knows what that is unless you like really cover or
Your
follow
car
car
people.
news. I try to say it's just America's Auto Safety Regulator, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. So.
Yeah, and we have equivalent bodies over here, and a lot of countries have something like that. And I think, yeah, my concern is the same that these bodies are, which is that if you call something autopilot, if you call something full self-driving, and there are, I mean, other automakers are also kind of engaging in slightly questionable stuff around this, and certainly other automakers have been called out for bad naming,
Self-charging hybrids.
Yeah, self-charging hybrids, exactly. It just means it's a mild hybrid. Like to me, the problem here is that these are genuinely misleading names, because it sounds like you do not have to engage with the car anymore. And so, to me, it's really important that, you know, and this is part of the EV transition, because there will be more and more driver aids, because these are things that are important to add to EVs, partly for energy management, all of that efficiency stuff that we're all very, pro. A lot of that will come from big amounts of software that's helping you manage the car and helping you drive it in a way that's more efficient. And that doesn't take away from the driving experience and whatever. No. This is all kind of stuff that just makes the car work better. But yeah, I think something that's really important, and I'm glad to see NHTSA and other bodies kind of really getting into this, is, and I'm very surprised it's taken this long for something like this to really crack down on, because this is a fringe element of what is a very, very big investigation, and which I believe is still ongoing. Like, this is the first of what will probably be a series of things involving this. If you buy a car and you go to a dealer and you say, oh, wow, it's got full self-driving, and you take it away and you switch on full self-driving, and it actually needs you to drive it still, that's a lie. That is just straight up false advertising, and it's dangerous false advertising.
Can I just jump in real quick? Because a lot of people that don't know my experience in my career, I have over close to 15 years now have been in the automotive business, and a main portion of my job is getting people in the car and test driving cars and explaining them the technology and showing them features and whatnot. To your point, Hazel, I completely agree with you as far as the names go, because although I think the car companies are doing something right in the fact that a screen pops up and tells you you are responsible, you are liable, you have to be attentive, you have to do this and that, and they have driver monitoring and all this stuff. People associate the name with it literally being able to drive itself, no matter, and I cannot tell you how many times I've been with people in the car, so thousands and thousands and thousands of people in different brands, all different car brands that have driver assistance technology. And every time when I go to explain something, you give the name of the thing and they automatically associate that the car can drive itself, even though you're out of your mouth and the car in the screen is telling you this is not how that works. They take their hands off the wheel. I'm like, no, you have to have your hands on the wheel.
Yeah. Man, books are so undervalued.
It's incredible, the impact.
it's an education thing, and it's a just like, yeah, we never should have, Tesla never should have called these autopilot. Full self-driving is the worst, because it is nothing of the sort. Full self-driving has tried to kill me on 2 separate occasions. I don't know if the car knew that I was an Elon Musk critic and a journalist, and he just sent it in.
Almost certainly did.
Yeah, it did. If you've ever seen what my favorite Christmas movie, Batman Returns, the scene where the Penguin puts his thing on the Batmobile and just sends it around, crashing into things. Yeah, that's what Elon did to me on 2 occasions. It was very unpleasant. They should not have called it that. They should not have called it this system. Like, that's what California regulators are mad about. That's what the DMV's mad about. The federal government's mad about. And just like, I don't know. It's also like, this is such new technology. It's like, how many people out there like learn to drive because like when their parents or someone taught them like how to do 10 and 2 and how to yield and all that stuff. Like, no one's like, I remember dear old dad taught me how to use autopilot. Like, that doesn't exist yet. Like, this is stuff that's like 5 to 7 years old at most, and it's so brand new that we're in like the stupid phase of it yet, until it's understood in mainstream over time. But I don't know if education and usage is getting better or not. I'm not really seeing evidence of that, I guess.
Also, the thing that I don't quite get about a lot of these things is that it's like, hey, this thing can drive at a steady speed, kind of like for quite a long distance, and like it's fine. Which that's one of the good bits of driving. Like,
that's the fun.
Sometimes you don't want to drive.
It's true. But like, the things I don't like doing is things like, and there are some really good versions of this now, like parking. That's fine. Yeah. The car can do that. I don't want to do it. Like,
works for me. Parking's rubbish. Parallel parking in London. Have you seen the size of the curbs? You destroy your shiny alloys. Anyway, we have a very short amount of time left, and there's 2 stories that I want to touch on, or we should touch on very quickly. The first is the Ford F-150, the Lecky F-150, the Lightning. It's being pulled back a little bit. Production numbers have been moved from 3,200 per week to just 1,600. Very quickly, what do we think?
Tim Levin, one of our reporters, I think he had a great take on this, and it just very, very briefly, it's like, I think it speaks to the same thing we were talking about earlier. It's an affordability thing. Like, I'm getting a Lightning next week when I go to Texas to visit family for the holidays. It is $88,700, and it's just, I think that the what Tim says is the auto industry tactic of just like the same expensive cars you've always had, but batteries. I'm not sure it's working out. But at the same time, like, Ford keeps posting record EV sales every month, so I'm trying to figure out what that disconnect is. But that's all I got.
I'm also curious, has anyone heard an update on the fact that, Ford had said that they were going to start integrating Android, Google Automotive into their vehicles? Like, when is that happening? Like, is there a ramp down into attempt to try to change things on the production line? I don't know. It is sad for me, but I agree with 100%, like the article and what you just said, Patrick. It's definitely an affordability problem, which is a shame because I love this truck. This is such a great buy, in my opinion. I love this so much.
I'm excited to drive one. I'm going to spend 10 days with it next week. I'm taking it through Texas. I'm going to try and win some hearts and minds of my family and who are EV skeptics. I'm excited for this thing, but it's a shame to see that it's being this poster child of like, this isn't working out, because I don't know. We'll see. There's also Ford T3s coming. That's what I saw a lot of people bring that up. They're sort of purpose-built, ground-up truck that's electric, like a dedicated platform and everything like that. If they can figure that out, I hope that's going to be really successful. So I don't know. We'll on the plus side, Ford's selling a lot of hybrid F-150s. That's good for emissions. Like, I'll take that win there, but I don't know.
Yeah. I feel like, and I hope that this is something that OEMs will learn from. It doesn't quite seem to be the case yet, because we are discussing price points a lot on this podcast, but and I don't think it was necessarily totally naive of Ford to sort of do this, because I think they had good intentions and that they believed they could deliver at the prices that we were saying. But I sort of hope that OEMs stop leading because when this launched, a lot of the excitement was that it was so affordable as a vehicle compared to others, and I sort of think they've shot themselves in the foot a bit with it in retrospect, because now it's yeah, I don't know, it's making it look worse than it is, and like more of a mistake or like an engineering error than it is, when actually like I haven't driven an F-150 Lightning because unsurprisingly there are not a ton in London.
There aren't many in London, no.
It's really great.
Yeah, partly because of the number of tons it weighs, but to me it seemed like a really great solution for quite a lot of segments of the American market, and something where an OEM like Ford could just say to Tesla, like, you don't have one of these, and this is not something anyone comes to you for, and this is ours, and this is an icon. And I think a lot of the great engineering and a lot of the cleverness that Ford put into it, and the team that built the F-150 Lightning, it sort of got all a bit lost in this kind of not being able to deliver at the price that they promised.
Yeah. I am very excited about T3 because when I was at the F-150 Lightning, like the first one coming off the assembly, they had an event at the Rouge Electric Vehicle Center in Michigan. And I walked through the factory with Sandy Monroe. We did a whole like tour of everything. It was really fun. But at that event, I talked to Jim Farley, and he was like telling me about the T3. He's like, you're going to be so excited about this. And we're really working on efficiency. It's going to have some really dramatic, like polarizing design elements that it's I think he said active. I can't remember exactly, but I have it like on a tweet or something like that. The way he phrased it was like active aerodynamics of some sort. So I honestly, I think that Ford gets it. It's just this pricing struggle. And I think Jim Farley is doing what he needs at this point. I think they're still going to have struggles because of the dealer network, but that's not exclusive to them and getting dealers on board with EVs. But I think they're going to be making some compelling products coming up just based on what kind of feedback they've had. And also just like the Lightning as it is, like this is their first all-electric pickup truck, and it's a good truck, like a good execution. Obviously, I would like 400 plus miles of range, but we'll see what happens with T3.
Who wouldn't?
Ford's tying up with Red Bull in F1 in a few years.
Yes.
So if you've got active aero on the T3, and then you can get like an Adrian Newey mode, then like... I'm ordering one.
Sport Plus Track Newey. Yeah,
it'll be called Verstappen mode.
Powerful brand strategies right there.
One more very quick story. I know we're over our hour, but I think it's worth giving a nod to. This week, Land Rover released teaser images of the upcoming electric Range Rover. A little bit like Rolls-Royce, a Range Rover is kind of a car that will benefit greatly from being an EV. It suits it. It needs to be quiet and slick and needs to be quick. Not much has been said on it other than it can wade up to 34.4 inches or 850 millimeters for those who don't use Freedom units. It'll have active noise cancellation, so when you're driving on the road, the riffraff outside won't disturb you. And they say the power is comparable to
you could even podcast
V8.
from it.
You could even podcast from it. Challenge accepted. They say the power will be comparable to the V8. The one thing about this that that kind of piqued my interest and made me do, "Ooh, that's interesting," is that obviously they Land Rover and Jaguar, same team, right? For years, since the 90s, that the V8 it starts off in the XK, and now you can get it in the Range Rover, in an F-Type, in a this, in a that. They've had that synergy. Whatever that battery is going to be, I'll place a shiny fiver that battery is going to end up, and that powertrain is going to end up in the new Jag, which is going to allegedly reinvigorate the brand and make people want Jaguars again. That's the thing that made me go, this is more interesting than, oh, they've just put a battery in a Ranger. What do we think, friends?
About time. I hate that EV thing on the wheel, though.
Yeah, that is tacky.
That's how you know it's an EV. Don't
Hate
try
that
to
so much.
koi pond, please.
I like how they're like, I saw their like slogan or whatever was like focused on refinement, like the most refined Range Rover yet, which is interesting to me that is the angle that they're taking with this.
I mean, they're really not putting up any pretense anymore, and haven't been for like at least 10 or 15 years that Range Rovers are bought for anything other than like
Status.
yeah, that's all gone. Like no one is pretending that this is an off-roading vehicle, including the fact it's driving through a koi pond on the route of that wading. That said,
I'll never hear it coming.
Obviously there are, one, there is a rising sea level, and two, crumbling infrastructure in a lot of places that people live, both in the US and the UK. And so your school run in Chelsea could well involve having to drive through a large amount of water. So it's great news for everyone taking Tarquin and Ophelia to whatever the local private school is, that they won't have to worry about this.
No.
Watch out for the kois.
Watch out for the kois.
A very Cybertruckian view of the future there, Hazel. It's like your car must be able to wade through water. It has to have bioweapon defense mode. It must be bulletproof to get your kids to their exclusive private school, while the masses just run after you and try to mob your car to steal your food and what little resources and fresh water you have.
I mean, that's kind of been where concept cars have been for quite a while. Like when you look at the Audi Spheres or things, like there's a real dystopian edge to what a lot of, and not all of them. There's obviously some other stuff going on as well, but there's a real dystopian edge to a lot of what's being proposed, especially in the ultra luxury segment. I can't even talk. But yeah, I mean, yes, the instant thought actually that came to me with this was like, oh, that's for Miami. So yeah.
Yes, it'll be a great. I'm looking forward to it because I'm curious to see what they do, because this is kind of the first proper go. But yeah, they'll reveal more next year at some point. And on that, I think it's time we said goodbye for the week. One thing we didn't get to talk about, but you should all look up, is a Cybertruck with a Christmas tree on it getting towed by a Ford pickup truck, because it was a bit funny. But that is us for the week. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for listening along or watching along if you were on the stream. Thank you to Hazel, to Lacey, and to Patrick. We're all waving, I promise. Also, thank you to Danny Howard, our wonderful producer, who is making everything work on the stream. And if you want to get in touch with us, drop us an email at contact@InsideEVs.com. We will be back next Friday, and I will be wearing an even more Christmassy jumper. I don't know about you guys, but I'm going to watch Die Hard this weekend to mark the beginning of the festive season. And on that, we love you, and we'll see you next week. Bye.